Welcome to Ask the Chancellor. I'm Francine Jeffrey. I'm the Assistant Dean for Administration at the School of Medicine, and I'm the co-chair of the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Staff.
And I'm Bill Maurer. I'm the Dean of Social Sciences, and with Francine, I'm the co-chair of CACS as well.
We're here for an informal talk with our Chancellor, Dr. Howard Gilman. Welcome, Chancellor.
It's very nice to be here, Francine. Thanks so much.
We're happy to have you.
I'm really excited, by the way. This is going to be a great conversation.
Oh, we're very happy to be here, too. We're very excited.
Excellent.
So as a little backstory, at the Staff Assembly picnic last summer, we had a Meet the Chancellor, Ask the Chancellor question booth. And so staff were able to submit questions to the booth, and one thing led to another. We've compiled our questions, and now we'd like to spend a few minutes with you to ask you some of these questions and maybe meet the man behind the legend.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think, we'll set a legend aside, but otherwise, I'm looking forward to it as long as there's no hard math questions.
All right, well, we'll try with that one.
We'll see.
Okay.
Scratch the math.
Scratch the
Scratch
that
the
one
math.
comes out.
Okay, so let's get started. So here's the first question. So most staff members are familiar with the fact that you came to UCI from USC. How do you like UCI compared to USC, and what are the main differences in cultures, besides football, of course?
There's more in common than there are more commonalities than there are differences. But both campuses are fantastic comprehensive research universities with a great academic core, great professional schools, a medical clinical mission serving the community. Both campuses are part of the prestigious Association of American Universities, which are the top 60 universities in the country. And so anyone who's part of that group, they probably have more in common with each other than they do with other institutions. And both have this great spirit. This campus has always shown itself to move forward through innovation and by not copying its way to the top. And I think that was a hallmark of USC for a very long time. The main difference when I came here was that USC had always depended on engaging the community and building energy and support around the campus as the way that it was going to move forward and continue its ascendancy. And for most of our history, we had the privilege of being able to wait for increased state support as kind of our path for growth. But by the time I was invited a few years ago to come to the campus, I think the campus had realized that it's a very different model now for how we as great public universities are going to move forward. And they wanted to make sure that we were prepared to have the same kind of model of community engagement, building partnerships, connecting with our alumni, and finding those folks who wanted to work with us to do great work, that we were as prepared to do that as institutions like USC and other private universities were used to doing for a long time. The main difference, though, I have to say, and USC was very good to me and my family for a long time, there is something absolutely magical about coming back to the University of California. Every degree I ever earned was from the University of California. Would have never had an opportunity in life, I think, like I had, unless the people of California created this great university. And for all the great work that other private universities do, the ability to be part of the greatest public research university that has ever been created is a special privilege. And given everything that it meant for me and everything it meant for my wife Ellen and our family, the idea that we could come back and give back a bit was a very special, personal, and meaningful thing for us. And of course, the last thing is that while Tommy Trojan may be a little more famous, he can't hold a candle to Peter the Anteater. So it's always good to have the very best mascot in all of higher education.
I agree.
Good.
Excellent. Well, you've certainly given us a sense of your pride in the University of California and the things that it's offered you and the lessons that you've learned from SC that you've helped to take here as we become more outward-facing and engaged with the community. But the staff are also really interested in kind of the everyday aspects of the job. Okay. And on the everyday side, what's the most rewarding part of just coming to work in the morning here at UCI?
Well, I think for me, getting up every morning knowing that you're associated with a place with such a tremendous mission, it's an honor and a privilege. And I think, and I hope it's not just what motivates me, but that's something that we can all hold on to as administrators, as faculty, as staff, as students. It's a very special thing to be part of an entity that means so much in the world. You know, everything we do is about improving the human condition, providing opportunity for people, illuminating important questions, and generating social progress. And we're not just selling widgets. I mean, we're selling something truly magnificent that I think is one of the great engines of human enlightenment and social progress in the world. And so the main thing I think that inspires me about the job is just being part of an entity where everything we do is about making people better and making the world a better place. The other thing that's very meaningful is the opportunity to work with a lot of tremendous people. When you're an individual faculty member or even a department chair or a dean, you're mostly focusing on a certain corner of the university that itself is very inspirational. The privilege of the job as you're moving up a little bit is to have a broader view, and there's not a day that goes by where there isn't someone who's healing someone or discovering something in a lab or creating something magnificent in a studio. And just the sheer ability to see all of the tremendous work that's being done on this campus on a regular basis is a great source of pride and inspiration.
Wonderful. I think you're anticipating Francine's next question, so I think I'll just hand it off to her at this point.
Well, on an immediate level, what would you say is your favorite part of a day?
Favorite part of a day? After the first morning cup of coffee, and I think it occurs mostly during the winter quarter when I have a chance to still go back into the classroom and teach. It's interesting, that was my life and my identity for decades and decades. And as you become an administrator, your job is to encourage and advance the actual work that's being done by truly talented people around the campus. But there is something special about being reminded not just of being someone who is supporting and overseeing that work, but still gets a chance to do that work. And so during the winter quarter, when I get a chance to spend a couple of hours with amazing students and put away some of the administrative decisions and just do the work of thinking about important questions, working through difficult debates, and having people at the end of the semester have a clearer view of important things than they did at the beginning, there is really nothing quite like that.
What class do you teach?
So I co-teach a course with Erwin Chemerinsky, the fabulous dean of our law school, and we teach courses relating to constitutionalism. A few years ago it was civil rights. The last few years we've been teaching courses on free speech on college campuses. And in fact, as a result of the course that we taught last year, we thought we learned a lot from our students about how they think about traditional free speech debates. And so Erwin and I wrote a book called Free Speech on Campus that Yale University Press will be publishing in a couple of months. And we're hoping that we can make a little bit of a contribution to what sometimes is an overly difficult and conflict-ridden debate within American higher education these days.
Certainly an amazing time to be having that kind of class and writing this kind of book. I can't imagine.
There's not a week that goes by where there isn't another issue that arises, yeah.
So it sounds from this so far that you really don't have very much downtime. But in the small bits of downtime you do get, how do you spend it? Our staff are interested in hearing about the man behind the Chancellor.
Yeah, so, well, let's see. So nothing too fancy. Reading. And in my work, I do a lot of nonfiction reading, but there's nothing like immersing yourself in great fiction. So there's always a book nearby. Hiking. This is a beautiful part of the world, right, to get out. Ellen in particular, my wife Ellen, is persistent about searching out the latest wildflowers that might be in the community, and so we're always out there on the hunt. I do we will occasionally go see some movies. I play a little chess. It's hard to find people who actually want to play chess with an actual chessboard, but it helps clear my mind, and so every once in a while I'll get online and do some tactics or play a couple of games, and I think that mostly is what keeps us busy. Oh, and then an occasional television show.
An occasional such as?
Such as. Well, so we are big Walking Dead fans. I know. Well, and as the Dean of Social Sciences, very important show illuminating the nature of the human condition and the construction and destruction of social
All
life.
of civilization.
All of civilization. And we can't even get our kids to watch it, by the way, because Ellen and I are not overly squeamish, and our kids think it's too much. But also the Americans. We're really looking forward to Veep coming back on the air. And then some guilty pleasures like, Survivor and, MasterChef.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
MasterChef.
Yeah. It's very heartbreaking in MasterChef Junior when these spectacular little 9, 10, 11-year-olds, they don't quite muster things up, and then they're asked to leave, and as they're holding back the tears, it's difficult to watch, but we somehow keep going back to it.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Well, before I come to my real question, can I ask you, where is your favorite place to hike here in Orange County?
So we like the surroundings of the campus, and going by, getting a little bit closer to the coastline is always fantastic if we can take a little bit of extra time to do that. Yeah. What about you?
I like the same thing. I like to hike from my house in Turtle Rock over all the way to the beach,
Right.
right? All the way to Laguna.
And every once in a while, we'll do a nice long one on Bomber Canyon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we do too.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about being a reader, and you said that you talked a little bit about the types of books that you read for work and that you have a pleasure book at home. What are some of your favorite books or authors that you'd like to recommend to our students?
Oh, that I'd like to recommend. So that's always a tricky thing because I think I have way quirky tastes in things, and if I start recommending,
you can just say what you like.
yeah. We'll set aside like
Too much
Tolstoy and the
responsibility.
Russians
Yeah,
because that's a little
yeah.
too.
A little too heavy.
It's a little too heavy, but the last couple of years, there's some books that have really knocked me out. So I think the novels that astounded me the most the last few years are by Elena Ferrante, an Italian. Right, the Neapolitan novels, starting with My Brilliant Friend, are just an extraordinary accomplishment in letters, and they've created this global phenomenon, as you know, which is completely deserved and made more interesting by the fact that she writes under a pseudonym, and so there's a whole level of mystery about who this person is, which means there's no cult of celebrity when you're reading her stuff. It's just the work, which is really spectacular. Kate Atkinson has written some fantastic books the last couple of years. One is called Life After Life. There's another, God in Ruins, which are related, which are just, I think, tremendous. Who else? Jennifer Egan wrote a book called Visit from the Goon Squad that I liked a lot.
Oh, I love that. I forgot about that book.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
It was
I
a
love
couple of
that
years ago. I
book.
can't wait for her new book to come out. And then I always recommend, if people love reading and haven't read Alice Munro, the extraordinary Canadian short story writer, she just announced a couple of years ago that maybe she's going to stop writing, which would be too bad, although for decades and decades, those short stories are just perfect little gems. And so those are some of the authors that I keep coming back to.
I like most of those
Oh,
too.
good.
Yeah.
What about the movies?
Oh, the movies.
The staff also had some questions about the movies.
Okay. Well, it's funny about the movies. When I was just an only child in the San Fernando Valley in the early 70s, became obsessed with movies. Read Pauline Kael, who was one of the great movie critics. She wrote for The New Yorker. And that got me in. So that meant that when I was in college, the years that I was at UCLA, there wasn't a weekend where I didn't get the schedules of all the revival houses in LA and wasn't committing myself to watching every great movie that I could. And so less opportunity to do it now than before, but there was a time when I was very obsessed. So I like all the same movies that everybody else likes, but I'll do 3 quirky ones that maybe are just different, right? So one director that I fell in love with as an undergraduate is a French director named Jean Renoir, who directed in the 20s, 30s, and 40s mostly. And his masterwork is called Rules of the Game. And so no one's probably heard of it, but if you look up Jean Renoir Rules of the Game, you'll see it's a fairly well-regarded movie. The Godfather movies, I think, are a tremendous accomplishment, and I think people can argue whether Godfather or Citizen Kane is the greatest American film, but I've got a special affinity for the Godfather movies. Probably when I was coming of age, they were just right there at the time that you could develop a real passion for movies. And then there's this quirky movie, small movie that Richard Linklater directed in the 90s called Before Sunrise. That's about two college-age kids that meet on a train, and they decide before they have to depart that they're just going to spend an evening walking around Vienna, and in the course of the movie fall in love, but then when the sun rises they have to go their separate ways. And it's such a perfect movie that the director, every 8 or 9 or 10 years, brings the two actors together, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, to reintroduce the characters and the themes. And so if you like Before Sunrise, you can then do Before Sunset, and then just a few years ago, Before Midnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So those are three that, that have a special place in my heart.
You know, our staff questioners also wanted to know what's your favorite scary movie.
Assuming you like scary movies.
Yeah, usually.
Personally, I really go for horror.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
You're all in.
I'm all in.
And so for all that I said before about Walking Dead, we're not, Ellen and I aren't overly attracted to the virtue of this movie is that you're going to be scared all the time. But if it's a good movie and it has scary parts, that's okay. So I guess since I'm not a connoisseur, I guess I'd go with.
I can make recommendations.
You should make
but-
recommendations. So I'm going to mention a couple, and then you can tell me the big ones that I missed.
All right.
So you have to go back to Psycho is sort of establishing kind of a modern way of doing it. I think George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, the original one, it still holds up so well, and it's so scary. You know, there's The Shining. Everybody knows The Shining. The one that recently I really liked is a South Korean film called Train to Busan, which is another, you know, it's like instead of snakes on a train, it's like zombies on a train. Yeah. And that was terrific.
I haven't seen it, but
Yeah,
I've heard
yeah,
it's terrific.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not with you guys on any of
I
these.
know. At least I had a couple to mention.
Good.
Yeah.
So, inquiring minds also want to know if you collect anything, and if you do, what?
Boy, I don't. Which is not to say that I can't become a completely obsessive person about things, but I collect like directors that I like or authors that I like, and not like things. When I was younger, I collected baseball cards for a while, and so I do have this not completely robust but pretty good collection dating from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, because one of our neighbors gave me his collection and I built around it. But ever since, you know, sort of high school and college, I stopped. But there is a shoebox-like thing in the closet.
It's probably very valuable.
Well, one of these days, you know, we have to take a look at it. That's right. So in my copious free time, I'll figure out.
Yes, go through all of them.
We're getting a bit more biographical again.
Okay.
You speak very often about having been a first-generation college student.
Yeah.
And we'd like to hear you reflect a little bit about that, and also about what your parents did and how they encouraged or helped set you up for the career that you ended up in.
So my dad was a construction worker. I think he benefited. He grew up in L.A., Fairfax High School. Went to the war, came back, and there was this big construction boom, and so he worked for Art Construction for a long time. Not in like the office, you know. He was a laborer. The first time I learned about lava soap is that when we couldn't eat dinner until he came home and then took a bath just to get clean for dinner. So learned the virtues of lava soap. My mom was a homemaker until the early 70s. Things got tough. My dad got laid off. He had to switch careers, tried to earn a career in the San Fernando Valley selling small houses to young families under the GI Bill. And so Mom went and worked as a clerk typist at Van Nuys Elementary School. And a little 900 square foot house in the San Fernando Valley, but it was perfect, all you could want. The one thing that I think, it was clear that I was always going to college, but there was never like a conversation about it. But it also meant that at the time, unlike now, when we were making decisions about college, there was no guidance to be had from them. There was just sort of generic, you need to go to college. But one of the things about first-generation students is that you can't draw on your parents who went and your whole family giving you advice. And so basically I had, you know, half of my friends were applying to Cal State Northridge, the other half were applying to UCLA and the friends I liked better were applying to UCLA, and so I just said, well, I guess I'll apply to UCLA. And all of the angst that you have now and the visiting 18 different places, none of that was part of that dynamic. I was just trying to get in, and there was a couple of universities in the neighborhood, and I was lucky enough to get into one of them. Yeah.
Okay, I have a last question for you.
Oh.
So how can staff best contribute to the vision and the goals of UCI?
Wow, that's a great question. And in fact, what's important about the question is that typically we've been very good at talking about the central role of faculty, and we want you to come here and there's a whole career here. We always talk about our students finding a place to thrive and develop. So we want our faculty to thrive and develop and to change and to get better at what they do, and we want that of our students. And we haven't enough simply declared that it has to be the same point of view about the staff. And one of the lucky things about moving away from teaching most of the time to going into administration is that you do trade a little bit of time with students with time with staff. And the biggest change, in fact, is that most of the people that I get a chance to interact with are the extraordinary staff here. And you develop this deep appreciation. If there's one thing that I could bottle and distribute to the faculty is how much I've learned over the years that none of this works without the passion and the intelligence and the commitment of the staff. And so the first thing we have to do is show the right level of respect and admiration, and to empower staff to give us good ideas, to help us improve our processes. Most of the best ideas, I think, are going to come from our dedicated staff. And we have enshrined this in our new strategic plan. And so one of the 4 pillars of our strategic plan focuses on transforming the institution. And it's the dedicated, talented staff that's going to help us figure out the new paths, the new processes, the new ways of doing things that allow us to accomplish our goals at a higher level. And the last thing I'd say is that, I started by saying the thing that inspires me the most is sort of the mission of the university. And I think the thing that staff can do the most, and it's something we all have to do the most, is occasionally take a step back and think about why we're here and how extraordinary an institution like this really is. And so when we have to get through the kind of week in and week out responsibilities we have to get through and need that extra motivation to push through, remembering that every single day we're healing people, we're discovering new things, we're transforming lives, that I think is going to mean that we're all going to work together as a team to help this university do what it's supposed to do, which is to promote social progress, serve the community, and enrich the lives of young people. And we can't do it unless we're all working together. And so as long as staff is realizing that central role and that very important mission, I think we're all going to be okay.
Great. Chancellor Gilman, on behalf of the staff and CACS and Francine, my co-host, we really want to thank you for taking the time to answer these staff questions today. It really shows a lot about your own dedication and commitment to set aside this time in your very busy schedule to answer these questions. And we just appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Well, and thank you both for everything that you do. Thanks to everyone that submitted questions. We'll have to do it again sometime. I thought the questions were very fair, and it was a real pleasure to be able to do it. And so thanks again for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks so much.